I never imagined I'd be telling this story, but here I am, and I need you to hear it straight from me. My name is Emily. I'm 22 years old, and I'm about to share something that still feels like a punch in the gut every time I replay it in my head. Weddings are supposed to be about love, unity, and family coming together. But mine turned into the clearest reminder that sometimes the people you expect to have your back are the very ones who push you away the hardest. It was my sister's wedding day. I had spent weeks helping with decorations, running errands, even staying up late to fix last-minute details she didn't have the energy to deal with. I thought my effort meant I mattered, that I was an important part of her big day. But when the ceremony started, I walked into the venue only to find something that shattered me. The first few rows, right by the altar, were filled with people I didn't even recognize. Friends of friends, distant acquaintances, strangers in glittering dresses and polished suits. My parents had personally escorted them to those seats, smiling proudly as if they were family. And me, their own daughter? I was guided all the way to the back, almost out of sight, as though my presence was an afterthought, an inconvenience rather than a joy. I sat there, my dress neatly pressed, my hair carefully styled, my heart breaking. All I could think was, why? Why wasn't I enough? Why did they choose strangers over me? That moment didn't just sting. It carved itself into me, leaving scars I don't know if I'll ever truly heal from. That day marked a turning point in my life. Sitting in the back row of my sister's wedding, I felt invisible in a room where I should have been celebrated as family. Every laugh, every smile from the front reminded me of where I wasn't allowed to sit. And while part of me wanted to brush it off as just a seating arrangement, deep down, I knew it was much more than that. It was symbolic of how my parents had been treating me for years, pushing me aside, giving priority to others, making me feel like a guest in my own family. I could feel tears threatening to spill as vows were exchanged. The room erupted in applause, but my claps were hollow, my smile forced. Around me, the other guests didn't notice my silence. They were too busy celebrating. But I noticed, and it was in that silence that a decision began forming inside me. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep swallowing the pain and acting like it didn't matter. What happened at that wedding wasn't just humiliating. It forced me to face the truth I had been avoiding. My family didn't see me the way I saw them. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop begging for a seat at their table. In this video, I'm going to take you with me through everything that happened that day, from the subtle moments that built up to the crushing reality, to the confrontation that followed, and the choices I had to make afterward. I'll share not just the pain, but the lessons I carried with me. So stay with me, because this isn't just my story. It's a mirror for anyone who's ever felt invisible in the place they should have felt most at home. The morning of the wedding started with a buzz of excitement that I thought I could hold on to all day. I woke up early, long before the alarm on my phone went off, because my heart was racing with nerves. It wasn't even my wedding, yet I had butterflies as though it were. I slipped into the dress I had carefully chosen weeks before, a pale lavender piece I thought would blend beautifully with the wedding's pastel theme. As I brushed through my hair and put on light makeup, I kept telling myself, today will be beautiful. Today, my family will shine together. I didn't know then that I was whispering a lie just to calm myself. At the house, the chaos of last-minute preparations greeted me immediately. My sister, glowing but stressed, rushed from room to room while stylists worked on her hair and makeup. Bridesmaids clustered around, sipping coffee and giggling as they fixed their dresses. I slipped in quietly, ready to help. And when she saw me, she gave me a quick hug, barely more than a pat on the back, before turning back to her friends. I told myself she was just busy, that she had too much on her plate to linger. Still, the distance stung. It was her wedding day, and already I felt like a shadow trailing behind. I found small ways to be useful, fetching safety pins, holding her bouquet while adjustments were made, running downstairs to check on the florist's delivery. Nobody asked me to, but I thought maybe if I stayed helpful enough, someone would notice, someone would thank me, someone would remember that I was more than just a background character. I kept watching my parents too, hoping for a smile or a nod of approval, but they were too busy mingling with distant relatives, introducing themselves to guests, and arranging details that had nothing to do with me. The venue itself was breathtaking. When we finally arrived, my heart leapt at the sight of it. An open hall filled with cascading flowers, white satin drapes, and crystal chandeliers catching the morning light. Rows of chairs were already lined up facing the altar, decorated with ribbons in shades of cream and lavender. It was the kind of place you dream about when you're little, imagining fairy tale weddings. I felt a small thrill of pride for my sister, thinking how magical it must feel for her to walk into such a scene. And then, a quieter thought whispered through me, maybe in some way, this will be magical for me too. As guests began trickling in, I helped guide them to their seats. At first, I didn't notice the pattern. My parents seemed eager, smiling brightly, shaking hands, ushering people toward the front rows. They treated every new arrival like a treasured guest. When I asked if I could help organize the seating chart, my mom brushed me off with a quick, "Don't worry, sweetheart, we've got it under control." Her tone wasn't harsh, but it carried a finality that left me frozen. I nodded and stepped aside, watching as cousins, colleagues, and even near strangers were carefully placed in prime spots near the altar. I tried to swallow the discomfort building in my chest. Surely it wasn't intentional, I told myself. Weddings are complicated, and not everyone can sit up front. Besides, what mattered was being there to support my sister, not where I sat. That's what I repeated in my head as the ceremony time crept closer. I took a seat temporarily toward the middle row, just to rest my legs, and imagined I'd stay there once things started. But soon an usher approached me, smiling politely but firmly, and said my seat had been reserved for someone else. I was asked to move. Confused, I stood up and glanced around. Other seats in the front and middle were being filled quickly, and when I asked where I should sit, he pointed vaguely toward the back. The back. At first, I thought maybe it was just a mistake, a mix-up that would be corrected once my parents saw me. So I went quietly, settling into a chair at the very end of the row, close to the exit door. From there, the decorations looked smaller, the aisle stretched endlessly forward, and the people at the altar were nothing more than outlines. My chest tightened. I searched the crowd for my parents, waving subtly to catch their attention, but they were too busy fussing over the front rows. My dad was laughing loudly with a man I had never met before, slapping him on the back like an old friend. My mom adjusted ribbons on the chairs, whispering to a distant cousin about how beautiful everything looked. Neither of them glanced my way, not once. I sat there, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, forcing myself not to cry. The humiliation was sharp, but what hurt most was how deliberate it seemed. This wasn't an accident. As the music swelled and everyone stood to welcome the bride, I rose too, but my legs felt heavy, as though weighed down by the realization pressing in on me. My sister walked down the aisle radiant, her smile wide, her gown sparkling with every step. The guests leaned forward, gasping and admiring her beauty. I wanted to cheer for her, to share in her joy, but a knot in my throat silenced me. I was clapping, yes, but inside I felt like I had been erased, watching a celebration I wasn't truly part of. During the vows, my eyes blurred with tears I didn't want anyone to see. The words of love and promise filled the room, but all I could hear was the echo of my own question. Why wasn't I good enough to sit closer? Why did they push me to the shadows when I was supposed to be family? I blinked quickly, forcing myself to breathe evenly, praying no one would notice the sadness on my face. The irony wasn't lost on me. Surrounded by flowers and joy, I had never felt lonelier. As the couple kissed and the audience erupted in cheers, my hands clapped automatically, but my heart was breaking. Everyone rushed forward to embrace the newlyweds, flooding the front with laughter and photographs. From my seat in the back, I watched it all like a stranger peering through a window at a party I wasn't invited to. My parents were front and center, glowing with pride, while I was hidden in the crowd, unseen, unacknowledged. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about seating. It was about where I truly stood in my family's eyes, a truth that would only become clearer as the night unfolded in ways I wasn't prepared for. The reception hall glittered with golden lights, the kind that made everything seem warm and perfect. Guests streamed in, their laughter filling the space as waiters balanced trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. From the outside, It was flawless. Everything my sister had dreamed of. But on the inside, I carried the heaviness of the ceremony, the sting of being placed in the shadows. I took a deep breath, straightened my dress, and told myself to push it down. "Don't ruin her day," I whispered in my head, even though my heart was begging for comfort. I hovered near the edges of the crowd as people mingled. Tables were beautifully decorated, each one labeled with carefully handwritten cards. I scanned the names, searching for mine, and when I found it, my chest tightened. My card was tucked far away, at a table by the exit doors again, near guests I barely knew. Meanwhile, my parents and immediate relatives were placed at the center, right by the dance floor, basking in attention. I stood there for a moment, my fingers brushing over my name card, fighting back tears. Seating wasn't supposed to matter, but it screamed everything I already feared. It showed me exactly where I stood. During the first toast, I raised my glass, though no one noticed me clinking it against the others. My sister's maid of honor gave a heartfelt speech that had everyone laughing and wiping away tears. My parents spoke next, their voices filled with pride, their words weaving stories of love and admiration for my sister. I waited, almost childishly, to hear even a passing mention of me, something small, a nod to my role as the supportive sister. But my name never crossed their lips. To them, it seemed, I was just another guest. My smile wavered, but I forced it back, unwilling to let anyone see me crack. When the music began, couples rushed to the dance floor. My sister and her new husband moved gracefully in their first dance, surrounded by the flashing lights of cameras. The crowd clapped and cheered, forming a circle of adoration. I lingered at the edges, swaying a little by myself, trying to disappear into the background. Strangers passed by me without a second glance, too busy enjoying themselves to notice the young woman standing alone with an untouched glass of champagne. I wondered if anyone could feel the weight pressing down on me, or if I had truly become invisible. I tried to make small talk at my table, but it was awkward. The guests around me were distant acquaintances, friends of my parents' co-workers, people who didn't know me beyond polite introductions. They asked me generic questions about school and work, smiling politely before turning back to their own conversations. I laughed when it seemed appropriate, but inside, I felt a hollowness spreading. I wasn't part of their world, and I wasn't part of the inner circle of my own family either. I was floating somewhere in between, belonging nowhere. At one point, I saw my mother laughing with a group of women near the main table. She looked radiant, her face glowing with pride, her voice animated as she shared stories. I caught her eye for a brief moment and smiled, hoping she might wave me over, invite me into the conversation. But her gaze slid past me quickly, as though I were just another guest blending into the crowd. The rejection wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was sharp, like a quiet knife twisting deeper with every passing second. The cutting moment came when the photographer began gathering family members for pictures. My parents rushed to the front, arranging themselves proudly beside my sister and her husband. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all were ushered in. I moved toward the group, heart beating fast, eager to finally be part of something. But before I could step closer, the photographer politely told me they had enough for now. I froze in place, my smile faltering as I realized I wasn't needed. I lingered, waiting to be called, but the session went on without me. Frame after frame was captured, my family immortalized in photographs that didn't include me. That was the moment my chest burned with something stronger than sadness. It was anger. Anger that I had bent myself backward trying to be useful, trying to belong, only to be treated like a stranger. I sat back down at my table, my hands trembling, my champagne untouched. I told myself I'd had enough of pretending, enough of swallowing every slight and humiliation. For years, I had excused their behavior, thinking maybe it was unintentional, maybe they didn't realize. But tonight, it was undeniable. They saw me. They simply chose not to acknowledge me. As the night wore on, laughter, music, and clinking glasses filled the air. Guests twirled on the dance floor, my sister glowed under the spotlight, and my parents shone proudly beside her. I stayed in the shadows, my smile fading as the truth grew clearer with each passing moment. I wasn't simply forgotten. I was excluded, and if I wanted to hold on to any sense of self-respect, I couldn't keep pretending that this family dynamic was normal. That realization began to settle deep inside me, stirring a question I wasn't ready to answer yet. What would happen when I finally stopped being silent? I slipped out of the reception hall for a moment, clutching my glass of water like it was an anchor. The hallway outside was quiet, the muffled music and laughter seeping through the closed doors. My heels clicked softly against the polished floor as I walked further away, needing space to breathe. My chest felt tight, and my throat ached from holding back tears. For the first time that evening, I allowed myself to lean against the wall, close my eyes, and feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. The cool silence gave me room to remember. It wasn't just tonight, I realized. Tonight was only the most visible example of a pattern that had been woven into my life for years. Ever since we were little, my sister was the shining star. She was praised for her grades, her beauty, her charm. Every achievement of hers was celebrated with family dinners and framed certificates. Meanwhile, my successes were often acknowledged with a brief smile, sometimes forgotten entirely. I told myself it was fine, that she deserved the spotlight, that I didn't need it. But the truth was, I did. I needed to feel seen too, and I rarely was. I remembered birthdays where my presents were practical, while hers were thoughtful and extravagant. I remembered school plays where my parents' cheers were lukewarm, but they stood up clapping wildly when my sister took the stage. I remembered coming home once with an award I had worked months for, only to find it placed on a shelf behind trophies and photos of her, gathering dust. Each moment seemed small at the time, but together they built the foundation of the emptiness I felt now, sitting at the back of her wedding like I had no place in my own family. The sound of laughter from inside pulled me back, sharp and painful. They were celebrating without me, as always. For a second, I considered walking away completely, leaving the reception, disappearing into the night without a word. Part of me thought no one would notice if I left. Maybe they'd even prefer it that way. But another part of me, the part that still ached for belonging, couldn't move. I lingered in the hallway, torn between running from the pain and confronting it head-on. I pressed my hands against my dress, smoothing it out as though that could calm me. I replayed the photographer's rejection in my head, the way my parents had brushed past me, the empty seat at the back. My stomach twisted. I wondered if they even realized what they were doing, or if, in their eyes, this treatment was justified somehow. Maybe they thought I was stronger, more independent, less in need of attention. Maybe they thought I would simply accept it, like I always had. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't strength that kept me silent all these years. It was fear. Fear of being unwanted, fear of making them angry, fear of losing the scraps of love they did give me. As I stood there, I remembered one specific afternoon when I was 12. My sister had been chosen for an honor at school, and my parents were glowing with pride. I had tried to share my own small accomplishment, a poem published in the school paper. But before I could finish my sentence, my dad had waved me off, saying, "That's nice, Emily, but let's focus on your sister right now." That phrase had replayed in my head for years. Let's focus on your sister right now. It seemed to sum up everything, and tonight, it was echoing louder than ever. The thought hit me like a cold wave. Maybe I had spent my entire life waiting for a seat that was never meant for me. Maybe I had begged for love from people who didn't know how to give it equally. The pain was sharp, but alongside it grew something else, anger mixed with clarity. If I kept waiting, if I kept lowering myself just to be noticed, I would never find peace. I had to decide whether to stay in the shadows or to finally step out, even if that meant doing it alone. I pushed myself away from the wall and walked back toward the reception doors. My reflection in the glass caught my eye. A young woman in a lavender dress, her eyes red but fierce. For the first time, I didn't see a forgotten daughter or a neglected sister. I saw someone who had endured years of being sidelined, yet still stood tall. Maybe I didn't have to beg for a place anymore. Maybe I could create one for myself, even if my parents never approved. Inside, the party was still in full swing. Guests were dancing, glasses were clinking, and the air buzzed with celebration. I slipped back in quietly, taking my seat at the edge of the room once more. But this time, I wasn't shrinking. I watched my family from a distance, my mind swirling with the decision building inside me. I couldn't keep this silence forever. Sooner or later, the words would break free, and when they did, I knew nothing in my family would ever be the same again. I sat at my table again, but this time the weight inside me had shifted. It was no longer just sadness. It was resolve slowly taking shape. The laughter echoing from the center of the room sounded distant, almost unreal, like a movie I wasn't cast in. I studied the people around me, their glowing faces, their animated conversations. No one seemed to notice that I was sitting in silence, my fork untouched on the plate in front of me. My heart pounded, each beat reminding me that I couldn't stay invisible forever. The DJ announced the father-daughter dance, and my breath caught. I watched as my dad proudly walked my sister onto the dance floor, their hands joined, their smiles wide. The crowd circled them, clapping and cheering as they swayed to the music. My chest burned as memories surfaced, me as a little girl, waiting for my turn to dance with him at family parties, only to be told he was too tired or too busy. And now, here he was, glowing with energy, twirling my sister like she was the only daughter who mattered. My eyes stung, but this time, I didn't look away. When the song ended, applause filled the room. My dad hugged my sister tightly, kissing her forehead, while I remained in my seat, my hands trembling under the table. Guests began moving toward the buffet, and chatter filled the air. My parents returned to their table at the center, laughing as though the night couldn't be more perfect. Something inside me snapped then. It wasn't a loud break, but a quiet certainty that if I didn't speak now, I might never forgive myself. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady, and walked across the room. The distance between my table and theirs felt endless. I could feel eyes glancing at me, curious, but I kept moving. My parents were mid-conversation when I reached them, and my mother turned to me with a polite smile, the kind you give to a guest. "Yes, sweetheart?" she asked, as though I'd interrupted something unimportant. The word sweetheart sounded empty, rehearsed, lacking warmth. I leaned in slightly, my voice low but firm. "Why am I sitting at the back? Why wasn't I included in the photos? Why am I being treated like I don't belong here?" My words trembled, but I forced them out, each one heavy with the years of silence I had swallowed. For a moment, their faces froze, the laughter fading into tension. My father shifted uncomfortably, glancing at my mother as though passing the responsibility to her. My mother's smile tightened. "Emily, this is your sister's big day. We didn't want to make things complicated. You know how these events are. It's all about appearances, keeping things organized." Her tone was gentle but dismissive, as though my feelings were just another inconvenience. My throat tightened. "Appearances?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "Do appearances matter more than your own daughter?" The words hung in the air, sharp and impossible to take back. Guests nearby turned their heads, sensing the tension. My father cleared his throat, lowering his voice. "Emily, don't make a scene. We'll talk about this later." But the dismissal was the final blow. Years of being told later, of being brushed aside, came crashing down all at once. My hands shook, but I didn't back down. "No," I said firmly. "We won't talk about it later, because later never comes with you. You've made it clear tonight where I stand, and I can't keep pretending it doesn't hurt." My voice cracked, but I held their eyes, refusing to let the silence swallow me again. For a moment, neither of them spoke. My sister, still glowing from her dance, looked at us with confusion, sensing something was wrong. My mom finally sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Emily, you're overreacting. You always make everything about yourself." The words sliced through me like glass. I could hear the judgment in her tone, the dismissal that had defined so many of our interactions. Around us, the celebration carried on, but for me, the world had narrowed to this moment. This confrontation I had avoided my whole life. I wanted to scream, to demand they see me, to beg them for the love I had chased since childhood. But instead, something colder and stronger rose inside me. I realized begging wouldn't change them. Nothing I said could make them rewrite the way they saw me. My voice shook, but it carried the weight of years when I finally whispered, "I'm your daughter too, and I deserve better than this." The words weren't loud, but they felt like thunder inside my chest. I didn't wait for their response. I turned and walked away, my heels clicking against the floor with a rhythm that matched the pounding in my heart. I didn't know where I was going, maybe outside, maybe anywhere away from their dismissive stares. The music swelled again behind me, laughter resumed. But for me, the night had shifted completely, because now, for the first time, I had spoken. And speaking had set something in motion that I couldn't stop, a truth that would unravel everything I thought I knew about family. I walked out of the reception hall and into the cool night air, my breath fogging slightly in the darkness. The muffled thump of music followed me through the walls, but out here it felt like another world entirely. My chest was still tight, my hands trembling from the confrontation. I leaned against a stone pillar, staring at the parking lot lights, and tried to process what had just happened. For years, I had imagined speaking my truth, but when the words finally came out, they didn't bring the relief I expected. Instead, there was a hollow ache, a sharp reminder that my parents had chosen to dismiss me once again. I thought about going home right then, slipping away without another goodbye. The idea of returning to that hall, of pretending everything was fine, felt unbearable. But as I stood in the silence, I realized I wasn't running away. I was claiming space for myself, maybe for the first time. I wasn't leaving because I was weak. I was leaving because I was done begging for a place where I was never truly wanted. That realization settled into me like a strange kind of peace, even as tears slid down my cheeks. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from a cousin, asking if I was okay. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back, "I just need space." The truth was, I didn't want pity or half-hearted comfort. What I wanted, what I had always wanted, was recognition from the people who mattered most. And since they refused to give it, maybe I needed to learn how to give it to myself. The thought was both terrifying and liberating, like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if I was about to fall or finally learn how to fly. Eventually, I gathered the strength to walk back inside. Not because I wanted to rejoin the celebration, but because I needed closure. The reception was in full swing, people laughing, plates clinking, couples dancing. It was as if nothing had happened, as if my outburst was just a ripple swallowed by the larger tide of the evening. My parents sat at their table, avoiding my gaze. My sister, too wrapped up in the joy of her night, didn't notice the storm that had just passed between us. And in that moment, I realized how alone I truly was, even in a crowded room. I sat at my back table one final time, this time not out of defeat, but out of choice. I let myself watch them, not with envy, but with clarity. I had spent years chasing their approval, yearning for validation, shrinking myself in hopes of being noticed. But tonight had stripped away the illusion. I could see it clearly now. No matter how much I gave, they had already decided who I was in their eyes. I was the background, the extra, the afterthought. And maybe nothing I did would ever change that. But here's what surprised me. Instead of crushing me, that realization began to free me. If I would never be their shining star, then maybe I didn't have to keep contorting myself to fit into their script. Maybe I could write my own story, one where I didn't sit quietly at the back, but stood where I belonged, even if it was on my own. The thought made my pulse race, but for the first time, it wasn't with fear, it was with possibility. When the night finally wound down, I didn't rush to say goodbye. My parents were busy thanking guests, my sister was laughing with her new husband, and no one seemed to notice me slipping away. As I stepped outside once more, the air felt cooler, sharper, almost cleansing. I wrapped my arms around myself and walked toward the parking lot, each step steady, deliberate. I wasn't leaving in shame this time. I was leaving with a choice, my choice. Driving home, the silence in the car was heavy but not unbearable. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. Every mile I put between myself and that wedding felt like shedding another layer of pain I had carried for years. The tears came again, but this time they weren't just from sadness. They were from release. From the recognition that maybe I couldn't change my family, but I could change how much power I gave them to define me. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my heart still ached, but underneath it, something new had begun to grow. Strength, determination, a quiet, stubborn kind of hope. I sat there in the car, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My makeup was smudged, my eyes swollen, but for the first time in a long time, I recognized the girl staring back at me. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't unworthy. She was just someone who had finally seen the truth and was brave enough to face it. That night, as I crawled into bed, I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something I didn't fully understand yet. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know exactly what came next. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never again beg for a seat at a table that refused to recognize me. From now on, I would build my own. And though the thought scared me, it also gave me a strength I had never felt before. A strength that would carry me into everything that came after this night. If you've stayed with me until now, thank you. Truly. Sharing this story wasn't easy because it means showing the cracks I tried so hard to hide. But sitting in the back row of my sister's wedding forced me to face something I had been avoiding for years, that sometimes the people who are supposed to love us the most are the very ones who make us feel the smallest. That realization broke me, but it also opened a door I didn't know was there. For so long I believed that if I just worked harder, loved louder, or stayed quieter, maybe my parents would finally notice me. I thought approval was something I had to earn, like a prize waiting at the finish line if only I ran fast enough. But that wedding showed me the truth. No matter how much I gave, they had already written me into a role I never agreed to play. And it was time to stop living by their script. Walking away from that reception wasn't just about leaving a party. It was about reclaiming myself. It was the first step toward understanding that I can't control how others see me, but I can control how I see myself. I don't have to keep begging for love from people who choose not to give it. I can learn to build it within me, piece by piece, until it becomes strong enough to carry me forward. And maybe, just maybe, that's what freedom feels like. I know I'm not the only one who has ever felt invisible in their own family. Maybe you've been overlooked, silenced, or treated like you didn't matter. If you're listening to this and nodding, please know you're not alone. Your worth is not defined by who claps for you, who saves you a seat, or who chooses to recognize you. Your worth is inherent. It's already there, even if others are too blind to see it. What happened that night didn't give me the happy ending I wanted, but it gave me something better. A beginning. A chance to rewrite the story of my life. One where I don't keep waiting for permission to matter. And if you take anything from what I've shared, let it be this. Stop waiting for someone else to validate you. Take up space. Claim your seat, even if you have to build the table yourself. And if my story touched something inside you, if it made you feel seen, I want to ask you one thing. Please subscribe to this channel, because here we tell the stories most people are too afraid to share. We talk about the pain, the silence, the moments that change everything, and how we can rise from them stronger. By subscribing, you're not just supporting me, you're joining a space where no one has to sit at the back anymore. So click that button, stay with me, and let's keep building this community together. Because your story matters just as much as mine does. And I promise you this, no matter how many times life tries to push you into the shadows, you deserve to stand in the light. Always.